So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome again to today's session. We hope to be able to bring through to you practical and insightful aspects as we try to pulse the four panel members based on their past experiences as well as what they're currently doing now in their current organization and their roles. Yeah. So I'll start off with Dennis because Dennis happens to be the first person on the screen from top left. So Dennis, my question for you is, if you look at this word resilience, could you share a little bit with us in terms of what you feel resilience actually means in the context of an organization or business?
Yeah, I'd like to share the Chinese idiom, remind us of crisis contain both danger and opportunity. So for COVID-19 pandemic has brought us a lot of inconvenience and much anxiety and uncertainty, but they are likely to be more digital in the new normal, as is already evidence that in the immediate response to this crisis, industry leaders are leveraging automation and robotic solutions. Some have started projects to increase end-to-end supply chain transparency, and some are fast-tracking automation programs to solve worker shortage arising from COVID-19.
Thanks a lot, Dennis, for that. And as we speak about this, I know all of you may have come from various industries. I'll pick one industry as an example, and then we can take it from there as we move into the other industrial applications. We know, with this whole pandemic, many have been working from home and especially shopping from home. So I think one area for us to talk about is, what does this automation and robotics have to do with warehousing and e-commerce, right? So what I want to do is to have Vincent. Vincent is actually working for a company called Xiong. They are the world's largest player as far as gripping and clamping technology is concerned. So Vincent, in regard to e-commerce and how that applies in a warehouse or logistics setting, any thoughts on that?
Right. Okay, first of all, let me introduce myself first. My name is Vincent. I'm the GM for Xiong Singapore, basically taking care of South Asia. What we do is actually we have two business units, the clamping technology and the gripping system. Today, we are talking more about the gripping system, which is more related to the automation or robotics. Come back to the question for Glenn. I think in terms of the logistics, I think we know that the pandemic, COVID-19 has also changed the world. The e-commerce actually, I think in the year 2020, you can see a lot of activities along this industry. The logistic itself, definitely for the back end, for warehousing, as well as for the packaging industry, we see that there's an interesting challenge, which is where we see a lot of opportunities for us to play a role to actually perhaps automate and help companies to rely less on the manpower. Definitely, this is a growth area, which I believe that given the correct partners, we can actually give the kind of solutions to elevate, to help companies to improve in terms of the warehousing needs and also the logistics aspect.
Right, thanks, Vincent. And Albert, could you bring to life an example of how this has been applied in your engagement with your clients within, as far as the warehousing and logistics space is concerned, with a specific example that could help people to try to connect the dots as well?
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Glenn. About your question, how does it affect this particular industry? As Dennis and Vincent mentioned already, the demand went up, and there's a very strong push to address this demand. I mean, companies cannot just say no. I will wait for your order. Clients will move somewhere else. Customers will move somewhere else. They'll find whatever happens, somebody will address that demand. And so, in terms of robotics and automation, because Hand Plus is helping companies adopt robotics and automation for their factory floors or for their warehouses in order to support their operations. And we've seen an uptick. I've seen there's a lot of inquiry, a lot of interest on where they can, first, how they can bring automation in, and two, where else can they put automation if they already have it, And a few companies are also asking, is this the right way of doing it? So what before is something that we know would happen maybe in the next 5, 10 years has suddenly been accelerated in such a short period of time. Before it was something you would see in the horizon. Now it's kind of like literally knocking on your door. Hey, automate or perish. You know, some it's very dramatic, but it's actually somewhere along that the effect to the company, something like this.
Okay, and in terms of a specific example, would you be able to bring to life one whereby you do actually see a client coming over and saying, look, this is our challenge, and then how did you all help to bring that to life for them in order for them to stay
Uh,
resilient and survive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have, for example, a client in manufacturing. It's a company here in Singapore, and during COVID, the production was a little bit low because everybody was shut down. But then when I think their own customers realized that this pandemic is going to be the new normal and they need to keep up the production anyway, all the pent up orders came coming in, and suddenly they in a normal day in a normal situation they need to double their manpower, do a 3 shifts instead of 2 shifts currently that they're doing, but they cannot find people. So, for example, they say one of the most time-consuming part is actually packing the materials that have been produced. Whatever their factory creates, it has to be boxed. It has to be put in a packaging. It has to be boxed. And it requires a lot of people to do that because they already have machines to actually produce the goods. But they require manpower to put things inside a box, inside a plastic, and then put in a box, seal the box, and stack them. So the question is, how can they automate that? So we have one client, we help do that, pick up the item, inspect it, put it in a box, and then so that they can move the production forward. So it's a very concrete example on how automation actually was able to help them do this.
Well, thanks a lot, Albert. And just for everybody's understanding of what Albert's company does, they do what I call unstructured pick and place, which means if things are odd shaped, if you don't get uniform items in a box, you could have a big, a small, a circular one, a square one. The system has that intelligence to be able to go and pick. And if you go to his website, you can see some videos where they actually have that demonstrated in competitions with the university, because he works with NTU and they do a lot of research, and ultimately this is a spin-off. Right now, with that in mind, I want to answer one question that has been posed by Maria, and her question is, how do we measure resilience, and up to what point can an organization be resilient? Basically, I think her question is, how do you build resilience within an organization? And is there a way of measuring that? So, I just want to open it up, but Piak Pong, if you want to answer that, be more than happy to have you, and then the rest can chime in.
Okay. I'll try to answer.
Sure.
Maria. Yeah, correct.
Sure.
In fact, from what I know, there's no scientific way of measuring resilience. Okay. What is more important is the vision of the company and how the company plan to prepare for any disruption. Okay. I'll give you an example. Okay. I come across companies that even before the COVID struck us, somewhere about 5 years ago, they already have the vision where they know they need to digitize. Okay, they need to move on the path of digital transformation. It's a manufacturing company, by the way. So, they'll start. In fact, 5 years ago, when the industrial floor is starting to pick up or starting to get hot, they start to prepare their workers, operators, engineers, all the way to their managers. What is digitalization? What is the digital transform? They prepare for it and they start to move into automation, right? So luckily or unluckily, the COVID struck last year or the year before, and a lot of companies were shut down. Okay, and the company actually depend a lot of foreign workers, and gratefully, because of the automation and the effort they put in place, they are able to continue to work even during the circuit breaker period. By the way, Singapore, we call it circuit breaker where everything's locked down. So they are able to continue their operation, continue their production, and what more after the reopening of the Singapore economy, you find that they have more orders compared to the pre-COVID time because their customer sees that they are prepared for the future. So their customer gain confidence in their customers. Okay, so that is something that the company management can think of. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Pierre. Anybody else want to add in regard to the question from Maria around, how can an organization be resilient, and is there a way we can measure? Anybody else? Just open it to the panel.
If I may add, the question of resilience is actually an interesting problem in robots as well. In control theory, actually, for a robot, we define resilience as being able to go back to the previous state after the system has experienced some disruption, right? But one thing so that means it's quite easy to measure resilience in that sense. If today I'm producing 1,000 items a day, and because of whatever disruption, pandemic, flood, typhoon, whatever it is, I cannot produce 1,000 units a day, I produce only 100, how long will it take me to get back to 1,000 units per day? So in manufacturing, it's a little bit straightforward in this sense. Even if it's service, let's say, if I'm in logistics, I can send out 1,000 packages a day. So, and disruption slowed me down. How can I get back to that? So there's a way to actually measure that kind of resilience. Just look at your previous performance. But then again, one thing that we have noticed recently is when you introduce robots and automation into the picture, you can never go back to the previous state. You go back to a different state. You go to a different state. Because when you introduce robots, for example, you can ramp up your production. More or less, you don't need to stop your activity because there are robots to do the job. For example, there are automation to do the job. Your baseline is not 1,000 anymore. Maybe your baseline is 2,000. So with automation, the built-in resilience brings you to a different state, hopefully better state, yeah. And most of the time it's a better state. But in this case, when we talk about resilience as being able to go back to where you were before, and resilience post automation and robotics, introduction of robotics and automation, I think there's a lot of opportunity there on how we can define this resilience when you are using robotics and automation.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much, Albert. I think it's very interesting that Albert has brought it to life. And the word resilience, just for everybody's intents and purposes, you just imagine you have a spring, you press it down and it goes back to its original shape, right? So if you think about that, you can always apply it to, hey, my revenue came down. Can I bring it back to the same state or even better? And I think what Albert is trying to say is that, look, you don't use that same reference point. The reference point may now be a lot higher because you're actually going beyond what you were used to, right? Now, another question from a very interesting person. His name is called Elon M. I'm assuming he must be Elon Musk. So we are very, very happy to have Elon Musk here with us. His question, and I'll direct it to Dennis, is where do robots fit in tomorrow's supply chain for manufacturers? And, Mitsubishi Electric is right in the midst of robotics and automation. So Dennis, that's your question.
Thank you, Glenn. I think the most important thing in manufacturing is to be lean and flexible, because demand go up and down, and you don't have the time and money to build a big manufacturing line each time there's a change. Hence, robots like a cobot will come in very handy. Where there is a production increase, you will put the robot there. When the production shift, you can redeploy the cobot to another place where it has more value.
Right. Thanks a lot for that. Anybody else wants to chime in regard to robots in tomorrow's supply chain, in regard to manufacturing?
Sorry, I would like to add about this because
sure, please do.
We have clients from both logistics and manufacturing, and what we have seen so far is when you're talking about robots in supply chain for manufacturing, assuming this is about moving materials, right? There are several opportunities. For example, you can put robots where you are transitioning item from point A to point B. At the end of the day, a robot is basically a picking technology. Yeah, you have an arm. Where else can you put an arm? So you can put robots, for example, transferring from truck to the pallet so that it can be wheeled inside the factory, from that pallet to the conveyor belt so that it can be brought into the manufacturing area or storage. And then you can do the reverse, from storage to wherever you need to do processing. After processing, we'll go to packing. So packing to palletizing, so it can be consolidated before it gets loaded to a truck. So even the loading to the truck can be done by robots. So in general, if you want to know where robots, you want to put where you can put robots, look at transition times, look at transition processes. Those are the perfect locations for robots.
Thanks for that, Albert. And I want to take that question one level deeper. And the question, taking it off Elon's question, is now, given the fact that somebody says, hey, look, it's interesting, where would my first step be in terms of applying a robot? Would it be somewhere where, things are very simple, or do I start with the most complex one because it takes away the biggest headache? Or I think you mentioned earlier on, Albert, that that's a bottleneck part of my process, which is packaging, and I go address that. What are the considerations? And maybe, Piak Pong, you are right in the midst of this co-development work with a lot of companies. What has been your experience?
Yeah, okay. So we know that robot is just a tool. Literally, it's just like what Albert has just mentioned, it's actually a picking device. This is actually correct. Okay. Now, before we introduce a robot, but what is very important is the human mindset. Okay, the employee of the company, they have to accept that things are changing. Okay, a robot is coming in to either work together with you or take over some of your jobs, or well, you can, of course, the workers can actually redeploy to a more valuable job. Okay, so the mindset change is very important, and the workers or the person have to accept that changing is on the way. Okay, then followed by the training of the person. Okay, operator can be a person that able to look after the robots. Right? It's not necessary to be a technician. It can be operator, because nowadays, especially cobot, is quite easy to program. You actually don't need an engineer to do in-depth programming. So the bottom line is job going to be changed, right? And to prepare the person to accept that a robot going to be the co-workers. That is very important. That is a good starting point.
Right. Thanks for that. Vincent, I know your past history involves a lot of transformation and therefore change management. Now, the question I have for you, which is actually what Vincent is asking, Vincent Xiao, is, humans versus robots. How do we allay the fear to end users that automation empowers them or disempowers them, if I may use that term?
Okay. Well, basically, I believe that, first of all, robot is not meant to replace all our jobs, all right? It is supposed to assist us, humans, to make our job easier. I quote the reference to, I think, just 2 days ago, I think our Trade and Industry Minister, Mr. Chan Chun-sing, I think he shared a little bit on the papers that Singapore aims to grow the manufacturing sector by 50%. I'm not sure whether any of you have read it, but I think this is an interesting article, which I think I have the newspaper article here. I just want to share with you that, in order for us to grow 50% over the next decade, which is actually at this point of time is about 20 to 21% of the GDP, 106 billion Sing dollar. This contributes about 450,000 workers, which is 12% of the workforce in Singapore. What does that mean? We know that in Singapore, basically the manpower is a shortage in general. That's why we depend a lot on foreign labor. Having to say that, we are very thankful for the past many years of all the support. We definitely want to enhance our position. Definitely robotics will come in place. We hope that this allows us to actually leverage on technology and to bring in better jobs. Like Mr. Tan has just mentioned, I think management of most companies should have the value, the mindset, and also the vision change for the staff in order to understand that robotics are not meant to replace the jobs. It is meant to improve the value of the employees, to make it easier for their job, day-to-day life. So I would say that this is something that everybody need to work together. And of course, I think there are many technology improvements over the last few years. I think collaborative robot is one of them. In fact, even for Shong, we have come up with many applications, many end effectors that is actually able to support many of the applications and also to reduce the dependency of labor. I give you an example. We do have one new product actually. I happen to have it just less than 1 week. This is basically an effector that is meant for sanding process. It can be used for polishing as well. So the weight itself is about less than 3 kg. So this can be applied to metal polishing, even the wood industry. That is a very wide spectrum of different industries that is labor intensive. So all this takes time for adjustment. I think management will need to see how to actually incorporate such technologies to their current process. But of course, they should actually try to improve their current process as much as possible, because again, employees, the mindset, everything need to change to adapt to this new technology.
Hey, thanks, Vincent. Now, because I just got to share a bit of, I call it a bit of good news. I hopefully should be qualified as an I 4.0 assessor by early February. So fingers crossed. I just finished my exams, I think last Friday. So let's see what happens, right? But I think it leads to this question around, as we talk about this robotics and automation, and you mentioned about the mindset of leadership just now, Vincent. I want to take this question to another level with the employees in the organization. And it also leads to Elon's question around, is Singapore's workforce ready? I will change the question this way. Are developing markets workforce ready to take this on? Because there's going to be job redesign, as an example. There's going to be new value-added work that they take on. How has that evolved, or what have you seen based on your experience? And I open this to the floor. Yeah, any of you can speak from your engagements with your customers. Like how did that workforce redesign and upskilling take place?
Maybe I take this.
Sure.
Yeah. Actually, there are two parts to this question. One is our Singapore workforce ready. Okay. You'll be quite surprised. Most of our Singaporean workforce are actually ready for transformation. We are ready for the change. Okay. So from my encounter with many companies, especially in manufacturing, they are actually ready, and they are willing to accept the change. Okay. Now, are they ready to take up this challenge? Okay, or are they trained enough? That's sad to say, most of us are not sufficiently trained to take up this new transformation challenge. That's why the government have pushed up a lot of incentive, especially in the past 1 or 2 years. There are a lot of traineeship scheme to encourage our local citizens to move into digital training. Okay, it is basically part of the main objective to prepare our country or our economy for this digital push. And on the poly side, we actually see quite a huge take up in this area, especially in the IT technology. There are very big demand in that. Right? Yeah, that's one.
Thanks. And I want to bring this question to Albert next. Why, Albert? Because I think you come from, I call it Kabayan heritage. And I work with a lot of Kabayans actually also when I was in my past job.
Mm.
How do you see that come to life in a place whereby, you know, government doesn't give as much support? Singapore government is very lucky. We got a lot of money. We give, you know, help to upgrade. How do you see that coming to life in a developing market? And if you can use Philippines as example.
Okay, because as part of our go-to-market strategy, we look at the region as our playground. Yeah, we look at opportunities. Actually, Singapore as a starting point, but we know that we can use Singapore as a jump-off point to go to these developing countries as well. And we all know Southeast Asia, for example, composed of all these developing countries: Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam. Are all the economies are ramping up, and there's a need. You cannot keep supplying manpower. At some point, there will come a point you need to level up the quality of production, the consistency of production, and at some point you really need automation. But as we have seen in the evolution of first world countries, automation becomes a natural part of the process. As long as there's demand, companies will always figure out a way how to bring automation in. Yes, they're expensive, but they will figure out a way. Now, and that involves as well as on reskilling and retooling or retraining their staff. Because if you think about it, the whole objective of robots and automation is to make it easier for the humans to do their job, so that the companies can deliver whatever they need to deliver to their customers. So the actual demand for the ground staff to use robots in automation, as long as the companies are willing to bring in the automation or able to do that, that will follow naturally. What is more challenging for us is getting this cohort of people, this kind of employers, who will service the robots themselves. Because this is tied to the first question, the other question of Vincent, where he asked about automation becoming empowering or disempowering users. Because yes, we can bring robots to make the lives of the regular staff easy, but then who will tune up the robot, who will service them? This is a different kind of skill set that currently does not exist. There's not a lot of in the market. And it's not just Singapore. It's not just developing countries. Even first world countries lack this kind of skill set. So there's a lot of opportunity. So at some point, yes, robotics and automation can eliminate some jobs, and these are the most boring jobs, what we call the 4D job: dangerous, dull. I forgot the other two, but yeah. But the important thing is the introduction of robotics and automation also necessitates the creation of a new type of job, and this is where we are lacking, because these same people who will do this kind of activity, servicing the automation and the robotics themselves, are the same group of people we need to push forward the innovation. These are the same skill set that we need to generate new R&D, do R&D, develop new technologies. So we can feel it, because as a startup, and I also come from the university, I'm a research fellow at the NTU, we keep looking for these kind of people. And otherwise, we cannot develop new things to help move the innovation. So on the business side, companies will always find a way to somehow bring them in and retrain their people. But more important than anything else is mindset. Mindset from the CEO level all the way to the bottom level. It's common, or we have found some clients in some other countries. The CEO are so adamant. They say, "Let's innovate. I'll buy the robot," and then nothing happens once the robot is on site, because the staffs are afraid that they might lose their job. On the other hand, you have staffs who keep telling their bosses, "Let's buy a robot. Let's buy this. We need this," and the bosses are like, "Too expensive." So even before those issues come to light, the mindset has to start first.
Well, thank you for that, Albert. And you actually alluded to a question around affordability and cost of investment. Can any of the panel members share? And of course, you can give a range, but the impression is that it's very expensive, right? And it might be costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Is that really the case, or is that myth not true? Or is that a myth?
maybe I just add on to what Albert just mentioned. Okay, in the education sectors, what we always advocate is to learn new things. You need to unlearn the old thing. Then you can actually learn the new stuff. Okay, just it's the same as robotics. You are so used to the way of manual way of handling things. Now you introduce robotics. Basically, nothing has changed. You have a new co-worker that come in, and he is going to do some of your job and make your job easier. Then you have time to do more value added jobs, right? That is the whole idea. So if you look at robot as a direct replacement of labor cost, yes, it's expensive, right? But you look at the benefit by deploying a robot, you gain resilience, you gain productivity, you gain the quality, and all this blah blah blah. Okay, I think in that sense, it's actually not expensive. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Any guideline as to what the order of magnitude looks like? Can, like, for example, can you buy a robot for together with the whole system, and not just that picking arm, for example, as a system? Are you looking in the tens of thousands? Are you looking at a couple of 100,000s or in the millions? Any idea, any gauge from anyone?
Yeah, in the past, it used to be expensive, but with the advance in technology and more players coming into this market, and with the support from all the research and development, hence bring the robot arm to a much significant low level. And of course, together with the engineering costs, I would say in the range of 30 to 100,000 for a small pick and place project.
Very nice, very nice. I think that's very interesting number because I remember 15, 20 years back in my old days when I was running the manufacturing plant, these numbers were definitely not like that. It was of an order of magnitude of 10 more. So I think it's interesting. And the other question I'll ask, and Dennis, maybe you can answer, is there's always this as a service type of offering nowadays. Are any of you familiar with that, or is there something that your company or other companies offering as a service where you now pay a bit smaller fee, but it's a subscription based kind of model? Any thoughts on that?
Definitely, we are keen to look into any possibility to help any manufacturers, whether the SME or the MNC, to adopt the use of robot, because we truly believe that there's a lot of value having a robot there. Just to enhance, just to add on to Albert example, I was personally at a plant, in a manufacturing plant in the region, and I personally encountered this elderly who picked the carton box up and down every single minute. And he has to do this for the whole 12-hour shift. We introduced robotic to the company, and after a few months, I came back and his job was redesigned to do something more meaningful. He was able to operate the robots in a very nice and professional manner. So this is something that is very close to my heart, that is not about the value, the price of the robot, but it's the value that we can bring to employee. Especially during this pandemic, there's a lot of stress in the manufacturing today. And if we can help them improve their life better, safer, and at the same time, we are able to continue to bring that productivity to the same level. This is something that we all hope to achieve.
Okay, no, thanks a lot for that. As you mentioned, now I want to put another spin from another parameter, another dimension. And the question is, as we talk about robots and how we do job skill redesign, have you seen with robots also the whole decision-making aspect or data and analytics aspect of that whole automation system, where you see workers now learning how to analyze, how to give insightful decisions or make decisions faster? Any thoughts on that from any panel members? Because we talked about the physical work. Analytics seems to be another area with automation and digitalization and robotics. Any thoughts on that from anybody?
I want to share my experience on that. So far, most clients, when they approach us, they are addressing very specific pain point, like I don't have manpower, or my clients are complaining that the quality of my work is not consistent, therefore I need to automate. So there are a few pain points that companies are actually trying to address when they bring in automation. Although the very first one that we see is also related to manpower, but there's also issue of reliability, repeatability, and quality assurance. Yeah. And when we bring the robots to them, we install the robots to them, they will say, oh, okay, now it can address my pain points. Now, the question is, they ask us, what kind of data does the robot actually gather? And this is where we show to them. Actually, in order for robots, we do unstructured picking, meaning the environment is undefined. You don't know which item can come in first, or maybe there are multiple items in the same view. Yeah, and or maybe the items are hidden and the robot needs to figure out how to pick it up. We tell them, actually, in order for a robot to be very intelligent, it needs to gather so much data that you won't even know what to do with it. So after they have solved their basic problem, they start looking, hey, since you have a lot of data, can we access it? Can we check? And what can we do about it? This conversation, when that happens, they need a different kind of expertise to help them do it. This is where data analytics come in. This is where a lot of data crunching needs to happen. We use AI in order to make our robots very intelligent. But in order to process this kind of data, it's a different kind of AI processing, but it can happen. And no one goes to the automation with the idea that, okay, I want to crunch data in order to make my production lean. Normally, it's like I make my production lean first, and now I have a lot of data generated from this. What can I do with the data? So that's the next step, I guess. And this is where Industry 4.0, even maybe higher, comes in when data is available, easily available, in a format that's easily processable. Yeah, then this kind of thing can happen. But it's happening now. A lot of companies are already doing it. But for SMEs, for example, small medium enterprises, it requires a different kind of infrastructure. But it's possible. It's possible for it to happen.
Okay. Now, as you mentioned data transfer, and you mentioned about a lot of data. Now, we've heard a lot of the time, many hackers would hack and go into your system through some of these devices and these robots. Any thoughts on that from any of the panel members in terms of how this has been addressed with some of your customers, or how your company is dealing with it?
If I may share, because we work with some hospitals as well to bring automation for them. In the last couple of years, personal data privacy acts have been rolled out in so many different countries. In Southeast Asia, for example, Philippines, Singapore have some of the toughest data privacy laws, and especially when you're dealing with humans in the environment. And a lot of companies, even before you talk about security, they will already tell you that can we use a standalone server or on what you call on-edge computing? Do not use cloud computing and everything, because we cannot allow data to go out of our premises. And then, so there's already this primary initial form of security, very crude, simply because it's not connected. But then for companies who are willing to use the cloud for computing, because they're accessing the information from overseas or something like this, especially when you have manufacturing in Asia and your headquarters is in Europe, they would require something like this. There are existing technologies to do that. But more critical for us, I think, is the hardware itself, the robot and the automation that we built has to have enough security features in order to prevent those kind of security breaches in the first place, like securing your Wi-Fi network, this kind of thing. These are very down-to-earth kind of solution. Already eliminate a lot of issue. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Anybody else wanted to add to this piece? Because we talked about hardware, we didn't really go into the software or the data analytics piece and the amount of data they generate. So anybody, any thoughts on that area as well? Okay, if not, we'll move on. And I think we're coming pretty close to time. So I just want to ask each and everyone to leave one key message with the audience. And maybe we start with Piat Kwang first. If there's one thing you wanted to leave with the audience specifically, what would that key message be?
Oh, okay. So literally what I say is digitalization is with us today. We like it or not, is with us, okay? So what is very important now is to equip oneself with the tools, not only to achieve the goals, but also have the skill that we can build confidence to become more self-reliant. That's very important. That means we need to keep on learning rather than just be comfortable with what we are doing and what we're very good at. We need to move a step, come out of our comfort zone and move one step ahead. Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot. Vincent, yours for the audience.
I'm going to just borrow one of my company's slogan, which is only innovations will move the company forward, right? I believe change basically is inevitable, definitely. We definitely need to measure and also find a better way to structure the changes so that both the management and also the employees can move together at the same time to adopt technology change. Robotics automation is one way to improve work life. And of course, I think in the Singapore context, there is always a way to break down the process to improve individually before the adoption of robotics or automation. So far, we have also advised some of the customers, SMEs, some of them, they wanted to go straight to robotics. But when I review and access their current process, sometimes I find that sometimes it is still a long way for them to improve their existing process before the robotics adoption comes in. So I think it's very important with the vision, innovate how to actually improve step by step. Of course, there are partners, there are also a lot of stakeholders, people like us, and also from the system integrators, and also from the robot manufacturers. We are definitely there improving the technology and also giving a better chance for this resilience. Yeah.
No, thanks a lot, Vincent. And I think, Vincent, you hit on a very important thing. And for the audience as well, it's like, the first thing most companies must do is to make sure that you're clear on your process. Because if the process is not clear, very difficult to automate. And I think just now Albert mentioned, the 4Ds, and he mentioned the word dial. Now, I use the word dial and I put a spin on what he's saying. He uses the word dial. Then later on, he mentioned repeatability and reproducibility in a way. What does that mean? Is basically your process must be such that end of the day, in order for you to achieve that dial state, that means every day it's the same thing, every minute it's the same thing. That's where that robotic and that automation piece kicks in. But if the process is not even defined, it's going to be a disaster at the get-go. I think that's why you're trying to drive at, Vincent. Am I right?
Right. Yeah. Industrial 4.0 already.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Dennis, your thoughts?
The time for manufacturing and logistic professional to seriously consider automation and robotic opportunities and solution is now. And we hope that we have the opportunity to work with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Albert, you wrap us up.
Oh, thank you. Almost what I wanted to say was already been mentioned by the other three speakers. But as in continuation what Dennis just said, do not be afraid of automation or robotics. It's going to happen whether we like it or not. We have to embrace it in order not to be left behind. Because as a business, if we're not going to do it, our competitors would. We would be left behind no matter what. We have to have that open mind, adapt. So we are here, Dennis, Vincent, Mr. Tan, myself, to help you guys if you need to understand how to undergo this journey and which technology is the right for you, and maybe is it even the right time to do the automation for you. We can help you seek out our help or seek out your trusted suppliers if you want. But please, robotics and automation is knocking at your door. You better come and open that.
Thank you, Albert. And I think for the audience, in summary, as you think of your journey, okay, you want to call it your I 4.0 journey, or just to keep it simple, you know what, I just need to get back to square one, or even square one plus, as Albert says, right? You've got a different reference point. I think important for you to consider the process, right? You got to be clear what process you're trying to fix or what business problem you're trying to achieve. At the same time, from a people standpoint, right? Process people, your people standpoint, as a leadership team, you are the decision makers. You provide the budgets. You facilitate your team to move forward and support them. That's a big element as business leaders, yeah. And then of course, your people, give them the opportunity to upskill, give them the opportunity to try something new with a new job role. Whether is it going to be, maintaining the robot and making sure things are squeaky clean and are working effectively. That's a new job design, or maybe it's analytics work because you generate so much data, right? And sometimes people get confused with data because it's too much. How do you then teach them how to look at data but produce insights that allow your business to make good decisions? And that's something that a lot of us are still trying to grapple with as we get a lot of data, right? So that's one thing to think about. And obviously, technology is where the robotics comes in. That's where you convert manual to automated. That's where you convert paper into data points for you to analyze. So people, process, technology, I want to leave that with you as I hear the speakers talk about, are your three must-have elements, and they must be in sync with each other. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you will have a machine that sits down there and nobody knows how to do it, and you've wasted a ton of money, right? So I just want to leave this with you. Thanks again to all our speakers speaking with depth of experience, and I think this hopefully would add value. I'm going to pass you over back to Jane. Jane, anything else you wanted to have with the audience and the panel?
Well, this has been a wonderful session. So thank you so much, everyone. We are so regretful that we've come up to time. So everyone, audience, please join me in thanking the speakers and the moderator, Glenn. And we do hope that we found today's web engagement session enlightening and useful. For those of you who want to rewatch the session to recache the nuggets of insights that the speakers have shared, you can watch it when we post it on the ITAP website after the session today. Okay. Before you go, please give us your feedback by completing the audience poll. This will be helpful for us so that we understand better your needs and we can attune content going forward. All right. So thank you everyone for asking questions, and again for joining us today. We look forward to having you participate in our future episodes of ITAP Connect series. All right. Thank you so much. Have a good day.